The following is intended for mature audiences only. Discretion is advised.
This is a Geek Bro podcast. What's up, besties? This is episode 6, Tijuana Flats of Childlike at Best with Mike Valdes. And guess what, Batos? I'm still the second part of that title. It's a new year and a new season, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, we have a lot of new things happening. One being that we now have a new release day. Now, Childlike at Best is going to be released on Tuesdays instead of Fridays. Now you can get your little nostalgia pants filled with a new episode early in the week as opposed to at the end of the week. Also, I've been interviewing a lot of new and cool people. I'm so excited for the coming weeks. I think you guys are going to just love this season. New season, new guests, new release day, and it's all still hosted by the same old cutie pie, Mikey Valdes. Also, before we get the show rolling, I wanted to let you know that I was on a very amazing podcast called Something in the Wilderness. It's a podcast that goes through the entire discography of Andrew McMahon. Andrew McMahon is, of course, the singer-songwriter of Something Corporate, Jack's Mannequin, and Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness. Andrew McMahon is my favorite singer-songwriter, and I was recently on an episode where I talked about Jack's Mannequin's Dark Blue, and it's a really good episode. It's funny, it's heartfelt, and I highly recommend if you are an emo pants like me. Today's episode is my buddy Shai Korman. Shai is a musician and podcaster. He is the co-host of his podcast, Friday Night Movie, which is a very fun movie podcast. I met Shai a couple of years ago at a Comic-Con, and we actually talk about it in the episode as well. And we talk a lot about childhood memories. We nerd out about music, movies, and we even play the Friday Night Movie card game, which is really, really fun if you like movies. Shai always finds a way to rack my brain and make me do all kinds of weird things with casting and what if Marty McFly was played by this actor or whatever the case. It's just a really, really fun time, and I think you guys are going to love this episode. So without further ado, please enjoy the very first episode of Season 2 with Shai Korman.
I feel like there's a sincerity in that song Sanctity that is...
There is. Well, it's like twofold because it comes from having been in a church my whole life and then using the chord, like the worship chords in a satirical way, because it's actually about you care too much about the system as opposed to actually helping people. And that's way more important, you know?
But you know, it's satirical, but it also I think is deeply spiritual.
Of course.
Right. And I think you don't always find... I'm very Jewish. And so I'm like super connected to my religion and my people and all that stuff. I listen to Jewish music, I guess, or Israeli music or Hebrew music or like all the Hanukkah parodies that are out there. And so I think it's interesting to see a comic, right? Like a professional comic and actor who also is comfortable playing in that world of the religious in a sincere way, but also in a funny way. And the other person that comes to mind that does that is Colbert, who is a totally down with talking about his faith, but is also so intellectually honest, which I think people automatically like dismiss religion as something that can be dishonest or underhanded, but not everybody has to do it that way. So I love that element of your album.
Oh, thank you so much, man. That means a lot. So Shai, where did you grow up, man?
I grew up in Montreal. I grew up in, I was born in Philadelphia, but I'm 7 years old, my 7th birthday party, which was this amazing bowling party, which only like the fancy kids got where I grew up in Philly. And I was like, whoa, if this is 7, I've arrived. And I got absurdly good presents. Like I got the big Transformers. You know how, I don't know if you remember in the 80s, right? You had the little mini guys like my little Bumblebee that I keep over here. Or keep near me most of the time. I don't know where he is right now, but but this one I got like the full size Transformers.
Nice.
And then my parents told us we were moving to Canada in the middle of the school year.
Oh no, that's why.
We were supposed to move for 3 years, and then we moved. We lived there for over 20 or almost 20, something like that. And it was an amazing place to grow up.
Tell me about it. Canada is actually one of the bucket list places, and it's gonna happen soon. I can feel it because that's where Hollywood is moving right now. So everything I'm auditioning for shoots there. But tell me about it. What was it like living in Montreal? And
Montreal is this amazing. First of all, Montreal in the 80s and 90s, right? So let's also put this in the context of the fact in the 80s and 90s, when I look at all the rules my own children live with right now versus the way it was in the 90s and the 80s, we were just, and I think this is kids all over North America particularly, but you know, if you were 11, you could walk all the way down to the main street in the suburban area. We were kind of urban suburban. We were in a city, but we were in the outskirts of the city. But you could walk for, 25-minute walk down to the little shops and walk around and go to the deli or the hot dog place, like well beyond where your parents could reach or see you. And you had a quarter. Or when we were older, they had these telephones where you could stick a credit card in them and swipe them. They still have them in Canada a little bit, these Bell telephones. Okay. So I think we lived in this very, very, very like this bubble of safety and fun and being able to explore a city.
Yeah.
That I think only my friends who lived in New York, like the city, and they were on a whole other level, but only my friends who lived in New York really lived that like city life. Like I remember my friends from New Jersey would come to visit and they would talk about going to the city, but they were amazed at how much we could hop on a subway whenever we wanted or on a bus. And that's how we got around as kids. So that was a great thing about going to Montreal. And then the other thing is Montreal is a very divided city in terms of the various cultures and communities. It's beautiful in terms of all of the different immigrant communities. You get such an amazing mix of people, but people stay and grow up and live and circulate a lot in their community they grew up in. So Greeks, Italians, Haitians, Grenadians, Ethiopians, Russians, all in Montreal and all living near each other. But I spent most of my time in the Jewish community. And while I had some neighbors that weren't Jewish and some friends here and there, you could almost live your whole life in Montreal in this like sub-city of Jewish life, going to a Jewish day school. And so I jokingly, I grew up in the shtetl in Montreal. Which I don't know if great. Your listeners are, well, you're from Florida, so South Florida, right? So you probably
well, and I've always wanted to be Jewish, so I know the Jewish culture.
Well, as a comedian, I feel like that's
the goal.
Yeah, I see that.
Like you want to get ordained just to be funny.
Yeah,
you know.
And so I say like I grew up in Montreal, but I grew up in Jewish Montreal, which has its own funny tics and language. And my sisters and I, my podcast co-host, my sisters and I, we talk about it all the time. And we love anything that we can smell a little Montreal on something, or if we're watching a movie and we know it was filmed, that we can tell it was filmed in Montreal. We get so excited. We will watch a garbage movie if we see that. Oh look, the Snowden Metro's in the background. Woohoo!
That's hilarious. I love that. You said that you went to Jewish school.
Oh yeah.
What kind of kid would you say that you were growing up?
So Jewish day school, people have different impressions of what Jewish school is. I did not go to an Orthodox school, where meaning we weren't segregated men and women. I did not have the little curls that people have, although there's big neighborhoods like that in the Montreal area. We were in, but it was not also super liberal kind of place growing up. Like it was a conservative Jewish day school system. So we learned about all the holidays every day, and we had off for all the Jewish holidays. Yeah. And the way I would describe myself in the school is that because we went to school in our own community where not my parents, but a lot of the parents had grown up together in Montreal. So they knew the teachers, like it was very, very, very enclosed. Yeah. The level of, I would say, familiarity, which is the nice way to say it, but like I would say no rules in which kids behaved in class as well as their parents, because it was like you were going to school with family. So people was just out of control all the times, particularly in my grade, which was like notoriously always in trouble. Oh, yeah. And I was a like middle of the road nice kid. So the teachers loved me, even though I would say I peaked intellectually in 5th grade in terms of my like grades and work habits.
Sure. Oh yeah, for me it was like kindergarten.
Yeah, I mean, I was like considered super smart until 5th grade, and when I realized that being super smart, they put you in this special like EPA class, it was called.
Oh yeah, that gives me anxiety.
Oh yeah, and I totally. And I was like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, the reward for being smart is more work. What is this?
Yeah, that's not fun.
I was like, please, no. I stopped doing the homework, and it took me out of it. And I would say it took me a while to find my best friends, but when I was 12, at the beginning, high school begins in Canada, or at least in Montreal in 7th grade. I found my best friends the best friends in school over that year from like 1992 to 1993. I made friends with my friend Josh in school, my friend Howie, who became my musical writing partner. And that solidified, like, those are still my best friends.
That's awesome.
I was just like, I was a nice kid. I was really anxious, but more behind the scenes. Didn't get in a lot of trouble, but did things that could have gotten me in trouble. But the people around me were always doing worse things.
Sure.
Like when I graduated high school, so many of the students had been removed from the eligibility for final awards because of ridiculous, terrible things like pranks they had pulled throughout the last 2 years of high school. I walked away with like 4 awards.
It's funny how much I relate to this because my school was exactly like that, in that my class was a very like prankster kind of class. And I was also quite like you, where I was a nice kid. I was very respectful. However, I did have my outbursts every now and again where I wanted to be funny or I wanted to do certain things.
Trying on those hats.
Right. And sometimes I would pull pranks by myself and not even tell anyone, just like do them because I thought they were funny, you know? And like one time I remember walking into a meeting with like all of the baseball team, and it's mostly everyone that has ever played baseball or whatever, but I came in for tryouts, just like it was like a meeting before tryouts. And I came in and the coach came up to me and he was like, "I've never seen you here before. What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Honestly, man, I'm just here for the clothes. You guys have really cool jackets and I just want one. I think those are really cool." And for the rest of the year, my whole senior year, the baseball team was like, "This kid is the funniest kid." It went around the school, but like I just did it because I thought it was funny.
Yeah, I never had moments like that because there were really, really funny people around me. I mean, like, also terrible funny, and
sure.
So I was never
it's
like
high school.
Yeah, I was never the funny kid. Every once in a while I would try on the hat of what the funnier, meaner kids were doing. Mm-hmm. And I'll say maybe once in a while in the moment it would land, but like those moments basically stick with me as like dark marks of shame on my heart that
sure.
I like relive in nightmares. So
I get that.
I have like deep resentment for some of our class clowns that were also super cool.
Yeah.
The ladies were like, "Oh my God, that guy's so cool. He's got one mustache whisker that he wouldn't shave because he was the first guy to get one." And who would do things like, you know, howl at the teachers when they weren't looking. And like they'd play a game where it was just like them punching you in the face or
it's like all these kids go to the same training course and they all do the same thing because you're just repeating stuff that all the kids at my school did.
I will say the ones in my high school that did not come from rich families, like the ones that came from rich families are like working in their parents' businesses and they're doing just fine. Like the ones who are prank calling me like well into their 20s.
Oh boy.
You know, like when it's not funny anymore, you know, and it's kind of ridiculous.
When it's really sad.
Most of those guys are doing okay. The ones that had, but the ones who didn't have like this like safety net of they don't have to do anything with their lives, I have to say like have not done awesome.
Yeah.
And the spiteful tiny person in me is sometimes really happy about that.
Of course. Yeah, of course. That makes total sense. Speaking of the spiteful tiny person that's inside of you, when you went home, what were your fandoms growing up? Like, what were the things that you liked watching on TV, movies? I mean, you're clearly a movie guy.
I love movies. Fandom, I would say what was really cool, and this is part of how I made part of where I found my best friends, was that those were people who were into the thing. Like when I met my friend Josh in 92, who again, we still talk every other day or every day. When I found the other dude who was into Star Wars, it was just like, okay, we're going to be friends forever.
Yeah. Back before the internet, that was like uncommon.
Yeah. And this is in the early days of the expanded universe too. So like he had already read the Thrawn trilogy, right? And told me about this Thrawn trilogy thing. And I was really into like knowing all the stuff about the movies and the characters. And we would talk about Star Wars. We would watch the movies. We would read the early Dark Horse comics. So I would say Star Wars is really my first fandom. And in those years, it was really important to me because it wasn't super cool. There was the re-releases in the 90s of the original movies, and a bunch of people went to see it. And there were some friends who'd never seen it before.
Yeah, that was the first time I ever saw it. Re-releases, yeah. Yeah,
and so, I mean, I saw it in the 80s. And so that to me was always really important because I was always unabashedly, unironically a Star Wars fan. It was never some like geeky thing that I was too cool for. Just loved it. Like for my 16th birthday, my sisters went and found, again, in the 90s, I don't know where they found this, the Ewok Village from somewhere.
Oh, wow.
I have 16-year-old going to do the Ewok Village. It's been sitting in boxes in my house and I take it out for the kids. But like, right. I was so happy to have it. So Star Wars is number one. I don't think there's another movie one that mattered to me back then. And then I would say a defining thing for me is around my bar mitzvah when I got my first CD player.
Nice.
Music in general is a fandom for me. Like I am just a music nerd.
Yeah.
But
here.
I would say the first couple bands for me to nerd out on, just buy every album I could find. And again, no internet. So you'd have to do Columbia House, or you'd have to go to used record stores in the States, as we called it in Canada.
Right.
R.E.M., Jethro Tull. I mean, a 13-year-old who tried to buy every Jethro Tull album. Really into Rock Flute. And the Bare Naked Ladies and Fish. Those are like foundational fandoms for me.
That actually tracks, considering the music that I've heard your band do. It reminds me of a mixture of those kinds of sounds.
That is right on. And Howie and I think, you know, we as we've gotten older, we have lots of different influences. We started off writing and playing what was closest to us physically that we could play. So it was like this mix of like punk rock and Weezer covers, but not like complicated Weezer, like the Sweater Song, and where Howie always tells the story where like we were so not tight as a band that the way we did the guitar solo was everybody stopped and one guy did the guitar solo.
Oh no.
and then I think for me, I don't want to speak for him, but for me, the Bare Naked Ladies, seeing the Bare Naked Ladies on stage, these out of shape, goofy looking guys with glasses and cargo shorts, joking around in, you know, peak 90s Bare Naked Ladies, that was life-changing for me. That was like, oh my goodness, I see myself in this. I would love to make this.
Yeah, they just make fun music. It's just fun.
Oh yeah.
It's so strange, but 90s music is my blind spot. You know, do you have a blind spot in your music nerddom?
I guess I have a lot of blind spots. Everyone has a lot of blind spots. I would say a certain depth of understanding of hip hop is a blind spot for me. So like I am very familiar with Wu-Tang because I like them a lot.
Love Wu-Tang.
And then I have cursory knowledge of some of the most important stuff from the Roots and from Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre and you know, but like I'm not a deep hip hop consumer the way I can go deep into ska or Frank Zappa or they're just you know, that's my blind spots are more genre related than time period related.
Sure, which is funny to me because I feel like the 90s is a genre. There's something about the 90s that feels like a genre to me.
Now, which 90s are you talking about? Like,
it's tough.
It is funny. There's like Losing My Religion, like that period, that sort of like pre-grunge explosion.
Yeah.
Acoustic rock, artsy videos.
I'm familiar with the liquid sugar pop 90s. I'm familiar with
late
that.
90s. So that's Britney Spears. So I mean, yeah, I guess there's probably some age difference between us. So like like the 90s is not one era for me. It's like very, very different chunks. There is that end of the 90s, end of rock, NSYNC, Britney Spears, pop explosion. The TRL era, if you will. Right.
I think that's when it started. At least like that's when it clicked for me as a kid. But even then, like when I was in college, especially like not being in my parents' house and being able to listen to whatever CD I wanted to, I was very like, I'm going to listen to everything that everybody likes. And so, of course I know about Nirvana, and of course I know about Alanis Morissette and like, things like that. Like the obvious stuff I definitely know about, but I don't know Garbage's single.
Dude.
You know what I mean?
Garbage. Let's just say for a minute, let's take an aside on Garbage. I saw Garbage at the Tibetan Freedom Concert in Amsterdam in like 1999, along with Alanis and Morissette and Ben Harper and a whole bunch of others from that era. Yeah. And there were all these bands we liked there. Yeah. Garbage we all walked away like, wow, Garbage is an amazing band. They blew the roof off the place. They had this like punk U2 energy live. So that's it. But you're right. That is a very 90s band to talk about. That's a perfect example.
To me, if it makes any sense, like to me, like an obscure, like yet mainstreamish reference to make is Garbage. That's
a good one.
You would never say Nirvana because everyone knows Nirvana. Like people wear their T-shirts.
Would Blues Traveler fit in there with you?
Basically.
Yeah, like Blues Traveler. Like one of my wife's previous boyfriends has the Blues Traveler emblem apparently tattooed on his chest. Okay, right? That's as 90s a thing that has ever happened.
That someone is so being 90s.
Like, this is the band of these bands that's going to make it. This is the one I'm taking with me forever. Now,
you would also know more than me, but especially in the genre that I play, is Sublime one of those bands as well? Were they in the 90s?
Well, Sublime's in the 90s, mid to late 90s.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And Sublime's a band that I've thought a lot about, and I own a lot of their like bootlegs and things like that because I happen to love that band.
Yeah.
Sublime there's a subset of 90s guys who died. And because Bradley Nowell died of a heroin overdose fairly young, they have this very small catalog. I don't want to put them on the level of Nirvana, although I would say I probably listen to Sublime a ton more. Them, Shannon Hoon from Blind Melon. Right. These are all, there were these geniuses who were train wrecks. So Sublime is definitely, but I would say not. I think it's a very 90s thing to like Sublime, especially because Sublime is frozen in the 90s.
Yeah, that is very true. Well, and technically so is Nirvana, aren't they?
Yeah, very much so.
They're frozen in the 90s.
It kind of blows your mind that I have to remind my wife, I'm like, that Dave Grohl was not in one, but like two of the biggest bands of all time.
Yeah.
Right? The Foo Fighters, which I remember when the Foo Fighters came out and people were like, oh, Dave Grohl trying to be a front man. How's that going to work out? Well, he'll probably end up in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice. That's how it
ends up being a huge deal. I mean, I don't know, man. I've thought about, because I was just talking to somebody about this recently. I think Nirvana is interesting. I like their music, but I find Kurt Cobain's life story way more interesting than that band.
Oh, so you're hitting on a concept that I love to talk about. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have this concept, which is and I don't necessarily believe this about Kurt Cobain, but this is, but I'm just like, I'll put it out there. Artists who are cooler than their music. So for me, the perfect example of that is Lenny Kravitz. I think Lenny Kravitz I think he has a nice body of work.
Yeah.
Right? Good songs.
But he's so much cooler than his music.
But think about how cool Lenny Kravitz is.
Yes, dude, he's so cool.
Is his cover of American Woman as cool as Lenny Kravitz is in the Hunger Games?
True.
No. And so
that's so true.
So I think that argument to me, like Kurt Cobain is someone that's a very fair argument to make. There's a taste question there, but when you think about him as an icon versus the number of songs that he produced, and is his music great? Yeah, it's great, but is Kurt Cobain a bigger concept than his music? Maybe.
Who knows, man? Maybe somebody 30 years from now is going to say the same thing about Britney Spears. They're going to be like, her life is more interesting than her music,
One could say that's another one. You could make a fair argument, especially if you paid attention to the sort of crazy Britney period. I didn't really pay attention.
Oh yeah, I know.
She had a bunch of great songs, but she hasn't remained iconic because of those songs, or she hasn't remained in the news.
100%. There was definitely a point where her image was more iconic than the product that she was making.
Yeah. I mean, even when she started, right? But there's this.
That's true.
I used to wrongly make the point about Bob Marley. I used to say, Bob Marley, he's on every picture in every dorm room. Like but only thing anybody owns is that greatest hit CD. And who wants to listen to that Sandals commercial music anymore?
Right.
And I was making this point to a musician friend of mine, and he mailed me, my friend Andrew mailed me Bob Marley Live at the Roxy, which is a 2-disc CD. He just gave it to me for free, and it completely changed. I was like, oh no, this is why Bob Marley is Bob Marley. Okay. I take it back entirely. It's magic.
Yeah, that moment is exactly what happened to me with Bruce Springsteen.
Oh, what was that for you?
My moment with Bruce Springsteen was like, I just don't get it, man. I just don't understand this guy. And then I saw him live, and I was just like, I get it. I completely understand this, man. I get why people call this guy the boss. I just get it, because his band, this is something people need to understand. When I saw him, he was playing only requests, and he was on stage for an hour and a half. And I was like, dude, this guy has at least a catalog of 200 songs.
200. Yeah. I mean, more.
At least 500.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. At least, I'm not even a huge fan of this guy. And I was like, he's got at least 200 songs. I mean, and people had huge signs up, with the songs they wanted to hear and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, so not only him, but I respect his band, because they have to know literally every song he's ever written to be able to play those shows. I was just like, I get it. I completely understand this guy now.
Well, I mean, live shows really will change your, he will outwork any person. Mm-hmm. On stage, any young person, forget any old person. And I don't know what he's doing, what he'll do now after quarantine, but I think that's going to be one of those ones where if he tours after quarantine, it will be impossible to get a ticket, but the desire to see someone like that post quarantine, that's the kind of thing that will get people out of their house, to see a legend like that. I've taken my kids to way more shows than anybody should take their little kids to.
You're the cool dad. You're the dad I wanted.
Billy Joel at Madison Square Garden, the Rolling Stones at FedEx Field.
That's what I was going to say. The big show here usually, other than the pop bands coming every now and again, every New Year's Eve, Billy Joel plays the Miami Airlines Arena. And it sells out like this, dude. I mean, to the brim, filled with people. And that's a dude you have to see live before you die.
Yeah.
He's
I tell my kids, and I stay, we took them to see Bob Dylan, which is conceptually, my kids would argue he's cooler than his music, especially now, because it's
love Bob Dylan, man.
Very weird now when you see him live. It's Sinatra songs, and he's playing his hits, but backwards and with a loop. But I told them, I said, hey, there will never be anything like this again. And Coldplay doesn't count. I'm sorry. There won't be anything like this show, these shows, the Rolling Stones. That'll never exist again in our lifetime, I don't think.
Yeah.
There won't be anything that ubiquitous and that, not universal, but where everybody knows it. Everybody knows.
Man, and you hit on something that I wanted to ask you. Who do you think is next? because like, yeah, we have the Rolling Stones, we still have Bob Dylan, we still have Springsteen, we still have Billy Joel, and even Elton, but like in a few years, who are we gonna have? Like U2, I guess.
I stress about this. I stress about this, and so I don't know what our age limit is going to be here, but let's break this down for a moment.
I think any band that is good enough for somebody that's in their 50s and 60s to a child will be like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Exactly. So let's take Billy Joel out of it. Too old.
Yeah,
I'm gonna take guys REM's age out of it. So pushing 60. And the reason why I'm going to take REM out of it, because I would have said REM, but they broke up. But to me, they were the only, and this is maybe a controversial opinion, I'm a big REM fan, but them purely as a live band, which most people don't really think of them, Michael Stipe is one of the only people who, in my view, could do what Mick Jagger could do on stage and Springsteen on stage. And I've seen him and Springsteen perform together. And so like that band to me could do it, but they retired. And that to me is a big milestone in like the world changing of music. Like my top bands are among them are REM and a Canadian band called the Tragically Hip, which I don't know if you know, but anyone should, I mean, sadly they're contemporaries to REM. And sadly, their lead singer died of brain cancer, Gord Downie, who's like one of the greatest poets. Imagine for Canadians, if Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, and Michael Stipe were in one band as one guy in one band. That's what Gord Downie was to Canadians. Yeah. And sell out arenas. And it was very sad when they announced that he was dying. He actually did one last tour. And my buddy Josh and I flew to Toronto to see one of the shows. And I mean, heartbreaking. But they were a band that, although never truly recognized in the United States, their live show was as good as it was when I saw them in an arena when I was 14 or 15, was as good as it was today. So to me, they were a band that could have, if they ever caught on, would have been that great. U2, I think, contemporaries of REM, like they've already arrived, and it's questionable with Bono's health. I mean, I'm sure they'll find a way to tour again, but it's questionable. I made fun of Coldplay. I do have to give them their due. They are really a big, important band that people really like. I've never been into their music, but they can do it.
Have you seen them live?
I have not, because that song Yellow
that might change your mind.
That song Yellow is the worst song I've ever heard.
I mean, I agree, but it might change your mind if you see them live.
but I will say, like, and also, so if I'm going to the generation younger than REM, Pearl Jam is absolutely an epic experience, and what
it's another 90s band.
Another 90s band. Well, that's it. We're talking like 90s and younger. They do something that I wish REM had done. I feel like REM would have been able to keep going if they did what Pearl Jam does. Pearl Jam does a different show every night. Yeah. Release their live shows to their audience. They're like a punk rock Grateful Dead. Yeah. And they are all about their fans. Almost like to the point where it's like impossible to get a Pearl Jam ticket because they only sell through their fan club, right? You can't get a ticket now, which I find frustrating because they are one of the few great remaining bands. And I don't love all of their music, but I saw them live and I was like, oh, I get why you would see them 10 times in a row. So Pearl Jam will absolutely do it. I think Green Day stands in there.
That's true.
Especially when they did American Idiot. Now they have to come out with another album of significance, I think. Yeah. But I think Green Day has that epic ability, particularly with that rock opera stuff that they do. Fish is a little bit on the older age. I guess they're contemporaries with these guys, but you may not be into them, but they're, the devotion to that band and what that band's relationship is with its fans. Once they reconstituted in 2009, it's a juggernaut. It's a culture on its own. I did New Year's last year there, and it's just I've made friends on Twitter, like generationally older and younger than me, just for love of the music of that band. So
that's awesome.
They will, they're as, if not more important. I love Dave Matthews. I'm not like a big Dave Matthews fan, but Dave Matthews, I mean, they're still one of the biggest touring machines in the world.
Yeah, I'm not a fan at all, but when it comes to this conversation, I have to say that they're one of those bands. Fan base is just bonkers.
Yeah, and the people just show up and they don't need a hit. That's the thing that is different now is that, I mean, Taylor Swift, got to give it to her. I mean, she's she's everything that she said she was. That people said Gaga is that. I saw Pink in concert. I haven't seen Gaga or Taylor Swift. I saw Pink in concert. That's one of the best concerts I've ever seen in my life.
Speaking of Taylor Swift, have you listened to her newest album?
No.
The
one that just came out like a couple of days ago?
No, that's like kind of like,
I can't tell. It always feels like she's surprising people with something.
No, that is true. But I want to say those are like the B-sides of Folklore. I think Folklore is the actual album.
Got it.
And then Evermore is the B-sides, which, don't get me wrong, Evermore is very good. It's a funny way to put it, but it's just so true because I'm not a big fan of Taylor Swift when she sounds like she's been like in the machine. There comes a time every 2 or 3 Taylor Swift albums where she reverts back inside of a giant cashmere sweater and writes songs inside of it. And that is my favorite Taylor Swift, where it sounds like she's been writing love songs inside of a cashmere sweater.
That's amazing. So Taylor Swift reminds me of the young person that I think is, or young person, I don't know, he's a little bit younger than me.
Yeah.
But one of the guys who's co-written with her and co-produced her is Jack Antonoff. And
that's one of the reasons why I love her.
To me, Jack Antonoff is our savior. And like,
dude, are you kidding me right now? We can nerd out about Jack Antonoff together. Yes.
Yeah. Oh man.
I love Jack Antonoff. Like I've actually. Okay. So how far back of a fan of Jack Antonoff are you?
So first of all, the only reason why I know who Jack Antonoff is that I went to see Pink a couple of years ago on the Beautiful Trauma tour with my wife for her birthday. Yeah. And this band opens called The Bleachers, and we just happened to have shown up. I didn't even know they were called Bleachers. I was like, The Bleachers. And they came out and they're in an arena and they owned the place. And then they did a Stevie Nicks cover and they had saxophone. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? Yeah. Like, who is this? And I texted a friend of mine and I was like, dude, have you heard about the Bleachers? What is this? And the guy's like, yeah, dude, Jack Antonoff.
Yeah.
He's been around forever. I'm like, what do you mean he's been around forever? He's
been writing hits forever.
Yeah. And so I'm not like an OG Jack Antonoff. I have a friend who like grew up with him too, who like, who laughs. I laugh about it all the time with him. How like, and so Jack Antonoff is that level up of the musician I wanted to be, because I also just love the way he incorporates his videos are cinematic. He's still making great videos. He has incredible sense of humor. He has incredible heart. He has extraordinary reverence for the Springsteens and the same music history that I grew up listening to, especially again, because I have a lot of friends from the New Jersey area, yet he is writing some of the biggest modern pop hits and contributing. And like, so to me, if there's somebody that's going to save our future, it's Jack Antonoff.
I love Jack Antonoff, man. I call him rock and roll Rick Moranis. I love him. I love him so much, man. I've seen him with Bleachers. I've seen him with Fun. And I saw him in his first band, Steel Train. That's the reason why I started liking him, was because I'm a Drive-Thru Records kid. So like I listened to like Newfound Glory and Something Corporate and Steel Train and Census Fail, all these different kinds of bands. Drive-Thru Records got me into the kind of like Warped Tour, punk rock, ska, like that kind of scene.
Like is Blink-182 count for you, or they're like too old for you?
No, they definitely count, but it's weird. I'm like an anomaly with them because they were big, but I was like a little too young when they were big. I basically found out about them when their self-titled record came out.
That's when I started respecting them, because I think that album's one of the best albums of that period.
Right.
Period that came out.
I agree, and that's when I first started like actually listening to them. Was when Feeling This and I Miss You and stuff like that came out. But technically, to the Blink-182 fan, they were big with Enema of the State. With all the small things Cheshire and stuff like that.
And Buddha and all that stuff.
Yeah, with Buddha and all that stuff.
To me, if Tom remained in the band and if they had their act together and didn't keep falling apart the way they have, they would be in this conversation of bands that would carry things forward.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I do really like the Blink-180 Skiba stuff. I don't think that stuff is bad. Like I think Dark Side, I think there's a lot of really good songs, but I feel like they're not going to recapture that original trio, or not original trio, because there wasn't a trio, but the peak Blink-182 trio.
There's something so funny about Blink-182 because it's so easy to make fun of them because the two singers are so polar opposite sounding. You know, like one guy actually sounds like he's singing and the other guy just has like a weird accent and like, feel so mad, I feel so angry. You know, like it's like, who sings like that, you know? But then Skiba comes in. Skiba sounds like Mark to me.
Part of what I love about the self-titled album, I'm sure this is what your listeners came for, by the way, a deep, nerdy conversation about Blink-182.
Who cares about what they think? This is what I'm wanting to talk about.
Part of what I love about Neighborhoods and the self-titled album is that I love the sound of bands breaking up. I love the like that Let It Be, Abbey Road, like the polar forces tearing that band apart. I'd love it if they
really funny.
I love it if they stayed together, because the best bands are the bands like U2 and REM and Tragically Hip. You know, these are some of my favorite bands where the original guys mostly stuck together and they had difficult moments that made great music, but in the end they stay friends or they stay family, which Blink didn't do. But I think that pushing of each other and that stretching of the way they were made their best music, and all of them flexing their various crazy muscles, as opposed to when they're making something that's a more unified product. And so, but like I love, like my favorite Beatles albums, Abbey Road and Let It Be in particular, because it's sort of falling apart, but it's awesome.
You must love Fleetwood Mac too.
I don't. Fleetwood Mac is like a band
that's the epitome of sounds of breaking up.
Yeah, I would say like musical blind spot for me is that like shiny 70s-ish sort of sound that like I like their songs more than I like the way their songs sound, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Like I would love to see Jack Antonoff doing a tour of only Fleetwood Mac music.
Sure.
And I saw like a live performance of Tusk on television, and that like blew my mind.
Yeah.
But I don't want to hear most Fleetwood Mac songs from the Fleetwood Mac album, which makes me... I
think it's probably the production. That's probably what you're thinking.
Yeah, the production.
Yeah, 70s production is harsh to listen to, especially when you're used to like what everything sounds like now, because everything is so perfect and like sparkly.
I think now is the new 70s. I think like right now, I almost always want to hear whoever I'm hearing live, because I think that, again, other than Jack Antonoff, I actually really like OK Go also.
Yeah, OK Go's great.
I don't think they were going to be monster huge, but I like smaller. I like when I'm hearing punk music and it sounds like there's a drum machine in it. It's not that I'm against drum machines. Like I use them too, but it just like, I feel like I'm listening to some songs sometimes. I'm like, ooh, you're going to regret that when people listen to like the drums on the drum set on Graceland. Right. So like Graceland, perfect album. But like, do we really think that that's how they'd record the drum set today if they were doing it? And so
of course not.
So that's how that's very, very geeky.
I love it though, man. I love that. That's my favorite kind of stuff to talk about. So I want to ask you just a few more things, because I actually wanted to play the Friday Night Movie game with you.
I have it with me, the Friday Night Movie Home Edition.
Which is a game that you created.
So we created it, and I'm not one to like let go of projects, but I do have a lot of things that I do in any given day.
Yeah.
Including a day job, right? Not including all the side projects. And now I saw recently someone selling on Instagram something called a pod deck.
Okay.
Which is like basically for podcasters who can't come up with their own topics for their conversations. And it's like a conversation starting deck. And what's funny is that when we created the Friday Night Movie Home game, the idea of the Friday Night Movie Home game was like a reverse engineered version of that. It was, rather than like you make up your podcast, is you like Friday Night Movie and you want to be in our conversation, here's our bits and here's some of our favorite topics, and have some fun using them. And I had some ideas on how to take it forward and make it into a game that we could really sell, and just sort of lost steam. But now I see like the pod deck out there and I'm like, oh God, we totally should. I mean, all due respect, it's a smart move on those guys' part. But
but like, honestly, man, not to throw shade on these guys, because what if they want to sponsor, which if you do, please, promo code bestie. But what person is using that to be like, I don't know how to talk to people, let me use this card? Like, where did you grow up? Like, you couldn't think of asking somebody that?
Yeah,
like,
and I like it as a game or a bid or something like that. So again, I respect the concept, and I'm a little bit jealous that they came out with something so universal, because we were like, you're going to like our podcast so much that you can take it home with us. But the whole premise of this is that you would play with a group of people where, because I do love podcasting, and I love the punk rock democratic nature of it. I even volunteer teaching podcasting to like 2nd through 5th graders at my kids' Jewish summer camp virtually.
Hell yeah, dude.
And what I love about it is that like anyone can really do it. And so I love this idea of like people playing podcasts at home, and you could play different podcasts at home, right? How fun would that be? Like, oh, we're going to do the Friday Night Movie Booster Pack tonight.
But and not only that, like what's super fun, especially about the game that you created, is that it's specific to your podcast, but you really only need to be a movie fan to find it fun.
Oh, yeah. You just need a little bit of pop culture. So you want to jump into it?
I wanted to ask you just a couple of questions, or just actually one before we jump into it. Since we're already going to talk about movies, what were your favorite snacks growing up?
Oh, first of all, I'm a champion snack food eater. Like, I mean,
we talked about this.
And in Canada, you couldn't get all the great snacks. So when I went to the United States, I was like Elvis in Graceland, like, with the peanut butter and bacon. Like, I was trying everything.
Yeah.
Go-to snacks growing up for me after school, I would come back and I would take a Costco-sized bag of circular corn chips. Like, not even like Tostitos. This is before Tostitos was everywhere, right? Just like those yellow circle, hard as a rock corn chips. And I'd pile them up and shred just bricks of cheese on top of the and microwave them up and have nachos and have like this Costco sized jug of salsa that I would pour and dip and pour and dip, pour it, and then go have dinner because I was a teenager. And then the other one was, there was this company that, and I've Googled this to see if they still exist. I found like a picture on the internet once, but they no longer make them. But there were these frozen bottom of the pizza, the pizza and the sauce. So it's just the pie and the sauce of this company called Da Vinci. Now this is unlike any pizza you've ever had. This is almost like a toaster oven focaccia with no cheese. I don't even know how to describe it, but they sold these in Montreal, these circular personal sized pizza. And I would take them out, take them out of the freezer when I get home. I'd shred that same cheese on them. And then because we were kosher and couldn't have meat on them, I'd take Bacos, the vegan Bacos made out of like, carcinogens, and I'd sprinkle them in. So I'd have like a bacon pizza and I'd melt it. And then I'd eat it while doing, because I love comic books so much. There was a phone line you could call every week that would tell you what comic books were being released that week. And I'd call the line, I'd listen to the list of comics, and I'd eat my Da Vinci pizza.
That's funny. That reminds me of like the Lunchables pizza.
Oh, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. I didn't know Lunchables made a pizza, though. That's like... Whew.
Yeah, it's not good.
That is not good for you. A Lunchables pizza.
Not good.
Does it come with little ham slices? Like
it comes with pepperoni slices.
Ooh, yeah. All right. I'm interested.
It's interesting to say the least. Some snack food that encompasses childhood is cereal. And I would like to know what your favorite cereals were. And I know that you have a lot of opinions, I guess, because we talked about this.
I can go deep on cereal.
Oh, I know.
Much deeper than I can on Blink 182. So as we settle into the second hour of Childlike at Best with Mike Valdes.
Oh, I'm into this.
So one of the, I'll say, first of all, I just love cereal.
You're talking to a guy that literally before I got on this call tweeted, bran is the only way to feel 74 but also taste something delicious.
Oh, that's a like bran. That should be on the box.
Yeah, bran is so good, but it makes you feel old.
Yeah,
but it's so tasty. I love bran,
yeah. Especially those ones that almost look like dog food, but they're so tasty.
Yeah. So I love that stuff. Grape nuts, I love all that.
So for cereal, I will say one of the most awesome things I've done during quarantine with my daughters was because I like, even in sort of crazy times, I like to stay optimistic and kind of keep making things an experience for the kids, especially because look, my kids' life is not hard. So no reason for them to be, there are people who have actual, difficult things have happened to them in life, let alone in life, like during this quarantine problems. And that's not my kids, thank God.
Yeah.
But I still want to entertain them and take advantage of being home with them. And so for a period when we do our supermarket runs all masked up and stuff, I'd go and I'd bring back 5 different sugar cereals. And on Friday mornings, I'd lay them out for the kids. They'd come down and we'd do a tasting of each of the different sugar cereals. And I'd be so excited because they had chocolate Frosted Flakes, which you could only get in Latin America when I was a kid. And we tried chocolate Lucky Charms. Oh my God, the idea of mixing chocolate and Lucky Charms, incredible. And one thing I've noticed is that this generation of kids just didn't grow up eating sugar cereals as a meal the way I did.
Yeah.
Like my parents, God bless my parents. Like it's got corn in it. It must be good for you.
Yeah.
It's just like that. It's just like those corn syrup lobby commercials where they're like, corn syrup is natural. It has corn in it. So, to me, the all-time greatest are threefold. But long-term, if I have to stick with one, it's got to be CTC, Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Yeah,
That's the best of all time. There's nothing like it.
That is very true.
It has to be eaten, in my view, right away when it's still crispy. Mm-hmm. And I can eat a whole box in one sitting. That's
the con to that cereal, is that it never feels like enough.
Yes, there's no cereal. So CTC original with the cinnamon swirl is okay, but not French Toast Crunch, not chocolate French toast, right? Just Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
The churro ones are actually pretty good.
Those are very good. I tried those during quarantine. Those were one of the things we tasted.
Those are very good.
Then Cocoa Krispies, specifically Cocoa Krispies with Snap, Crackle, and Pop, because they were not available in Canada. We had other thing called Cocoa Crunchies, which had this like marmoset on it or something like that. This like jolly
get
marmoset.
That out of my cereal box.
And so when we go back to the States, we'd bring boxes of Cocoa Krispies back. And so Cocoa Krispies is probably the other big one. And if I were to pick like a healthy one, right? Because there's a few healthy ones that I really like. Crispix.
Crispix is a very underrated cereal.
Crispix is what Chex wishes it could be.
Yes.
Like Chex in life get all the press, but Crispix eats their lunch every day.
Yes, dude. You're preaching the gospel right now. That's so true.
Rice on one side, corn on the other.
It's
crispy and milk.
It's so smart, man. I love that cereal. It's so underrated. Something I was realizing, because sometimes I talk to people and they're always like, well, what's your favorite cereal? And I never know, man, because like during this quarantine, I've been dieting and things like that. But I told myself, listen, dude, if you're going to diet and you're going to work out and all this stuff, let yourself have a thing every once in a while. And my thing is cereal. So I tell myself every once in a while you can have, which is why I've been able to try the Cinnamon Toast Crunch churros. And,
that's cool. Yeah, so for me, the issue is that I'll eat a box. I think every 6 months or so, I'll just have a cereal night with my wife.
Yeah.
We'll just tear apart a box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So that's kind of what happened. I mean, that's the bummerest thing about getting old.
Oh, yeah.
The biggest bummer thing about getting old. Like if I can have one I am not a drinker. Right. Like, I mean, I'll drink alcohol. Yeah. I'm not a substance user.
Yeah.
I just wish I could have no consequences for eating.
Yeah.
I'm an eater, not a drinker.
It's not that much to ask.
It's not, I just want to be able to eat anything I want. That's the superpower. When people are like, I want to fly, I want to be invincible. I'm like, nope. I want to be able to eat Cinnamon Toast Crunch like when I was 19.
Yeah. With no consequence. That would be the best. This episode of Childlike at Best with Mike Valdes is brought to you by the Crunch Cup. Save time in the morning by taking your cereal on the go. Simply add cereal to the inner cup, milk into the outer cup, screw on the lid, and you're ready to crunch. Eat cereal in the car, at your desk, or anywhere else you want. Go to thecrunchcup.com to purchase what I think is a genius invention and use the discount code MikeValdes10. That's Mike, M-I-K-E, Valdes, V-A-L-D-E-S, the number 10, to save 10% off of your order. You can also sign up for their monthly giveaway to win a year's supply of cereal. So what are you waiting for? Go to thecrunchcup.com and use promo code MikeValdes10 to save 10% off of your order. The Crunch Cup, it's better than spooning. This episode of Childlike at Best with Mike Valdes is also brought to you by Real Good Foods. If you're a long-time Childlike at Best listener, you know about Real Good Foods. They have incredibly tasty, low-carb, keto-friendly meals like cauliflower crust pizza, stuffed chicken, breakfast sandwiches, and ice cream. But now Real Good Foods has a brand new product, low-carb, high-protein entree bowls. And look, I'm talking chicken lasagna, lemon chicken, Mongolian beef, creamy carbonara, cauliflower mash, and braised beef. I mean, guys, this is absolutely incredible. And during this time of lockdown, it is really nice to just have something that you can throw in the microwave and know that you're actually getting good ingredients and it's actually tasty as well. So check out realgoodfoods.com and use the promo code BESTIE to save 15% off of your order. That's realgoodfoods.com. Use promo code BESTIE to save 15% off of your order at checkout. Real Good Foods. Keep it real. So usually we always review a box of cereal, but I didn't want to review it for this specific episode because we reviewed a box of cereal on your podcast.
Right. You were my guest at the live panel event at Gamer Comic Expo.
Yeah. So,
which by the way, since then I feel I don't know if it's just probably wildly misplaced, but I feel very connected to this like South Florida group of cosplayers and comedians and artists because I went to that con. Yeah. And so I follow all these folks, you included. I mean, I listen to your show and you know, I like we're in touch, but there's this whole group of cosplayers who don't have any idea who I am that I follow from that group because they were like some of the celebrities like down there. And so I feel like I'm plugged into this like South Florida scene that I'm not really a part of.
No, that's you're a part of it, at least to me. So we did meet at that show, and also just to let the listener know, I was on Friday Night Movie. We talked a lot about different movies and stories and all that kind of stuff, and we also reviewed Appa cereal from Avatar: The Last Airbender, which was great. And if you want to listen to that, subscribe to Friday Night Movie and listen to that.
We will do a special re-promotion of that in honor of this.
I thought it would be fun to promote, to do some cross promotion. And I absolutely love that show. So like anytime you guys ever want to have me back, I'm always down. I'm always down. But
because you haven't been on with the sisters, you're just on with me. My sisters is a whole other ball game, and geeking out with them will be so much fun for you.
They seem so fun. I love that. I love your whole family, man. Like I met your dad, I met your kids.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, my dad came to the panel.
Yeah, I met your dad, who's a sweetheart. I mean, your whole family is just great people. I'm into that. I like hanging out with good people.
They're my favorite folks. They're amazing.
If you're going to be stuck with anyone, at least be stuck with them, you know? It's funny, we were talking about Gamer Comic Expo, and I don't know how your experience was with that. And granted, I'm not going to get hired by them ever again, so I could talk about however I want to talk about them. But it was a nightmare for me. You were one of the shining lights of that weekend for me, where it was just like, oh, thank God. Like, if nothing else, at least I met Shai, at least I met Robbie Wrist, at least these things happened. But other than that, it was just like, oh my gosh, dude, this was a nightmare because I was running all the panels by myself. So that was a nightmare. And then getting all the celebrities intact and then having to talk through someone to talk to the management to find out what I'm supposed to do. It was just an absolute cluster, which is crazy because I talked to Robbie about it, in fact, and he was like, I remember that, and it was pretty bad, but it was not as bad as I've had in the past. And I was like, really? And he goes, yeah, dude, I've done shows where like I didn't even get paid. And I was like, what? That is absolutely bonkers to me. So like,
full disclosure about Gamer Comic Expo, I'm related to not the folks you were dealing with, but some of the partners in the venture. And so part of how I ended up there was my amazing cousins said, hey, we saw you're doing cons now with Friday Night Movie. Come down, have a family weekend and do the con. And so for me, I've done cons with Friday Night Movie, but it had been very much in my home turf. Like, I knew the area and the players and stuff like that. So I was, we were showing up in this warehouse zone in the conference center in Fort Lauderdale, like just way out of our element. So I sort of like didn't have context, right? So I knew like there was frustrating things, but I was just like, happy to be here. Got to make the most of it. We're the outsiders. And I had such an amazing time with these cousins who I am close with, but had not seen in many years. And my kids, my daughter, who was my intern for the weekend, she's not 9, she was, I think, 7 at the time. She just effortlessly bonded with her cousins, and they were all over the con doing things together. And she was walking up, getting interviews from people for me and giving out stickers and conducting interviews herself. So for me, I met awesome people like you and James Lugo, the gamer guy. Yeah. And, J9, one of the cosplayers I did had a great time meeting Janine J9, who does the best rogue ever. So there was so for me, it was a really special and fun experience. But I got to meet Brutus the Barber Beefcake, and not only did we interview him, but he also did a promo calling out shooting, as they say in wrestling, on my dear friends at the Take Two podcast, at the T3 podcast, who are a wrestling podcast. So like I had a ball, even though there were some very strange kind of logistical things going on. For me, it was a very special, and again, like I said, the bonds that I have with folks like you and the other folks that were there, I feel are really special. So,
well, and ultimately, man, it's crazy because I don't know how to describe the event. Because on a professional level, it was a failure for me on a professional level. But on a personal level, it was great because I met great people. And in fact, some of my like best moments on this podcast were at that show. Sadly, they legally wouldn't let me release it, but
really?
Yeah, they wouldn't let me release it. But for example, one of the most fun things I ever got to do was in a full room of people doing a Q&A for the voice of the Flash, and one of the things that he voiced was the Honey Nut Cheerios bee. And I had him review Honey Nut Cheerios as the Honey Nut Cheerios bee.
That is incredible.
And when I asked him to do it, somebody in the front row laughed so hard they started hyperventilating.
That's amazing.
And I was like, this is the best moment of my life.
And you weren't allowed to release that?
And I'm not allowed to release it.
Because of General Mills? Like the
because of just the people behind it, the production behind it and things like that.
Oh, that's a bummer.
But the good thing is that because I made friends with a lot of these people, I've had a lot of those people back. We're just not going to have those live moments again, but I still get to talk to them.
The situations where you problem solve with people, like, I mean, I remember when you came over and we just kind of hung out at the booth, and then I was like, I think I have a panel and I'm trying to figure out what to do. And then we put together the panel we did. Like, those are really fun. Those are really fun moments. Like I said, I have this like weird, I will go back. If they do another one, I'll go back just to, or I'll try to, I now want to try to. So my goal is, before COVID, was to do at least one con a year in my area. So we were actually, and we still are, signed up to exhibit at Baltimore Comic Con when they come back. So we had a booth, and now we'll have another one next year, which is cool. And then try to do 2 more out of state, whether go back to Florida or go out west or something like that, just for the fun of, I love doing the live show. I love making people feel a part of it. I love the fun of collaborating with folks in that. I love cons. They're so great. They're so positive.
I agree. I'm really hoping that the vaccine works so that way we're able to do these things again. But this seems like a good time to transition. I want to play the Friday Night Movie game with you.
So the Friday Night Movie Home Edition, here it is. There's only a few prototypes left. And we have 2 piles. And the way it would work in our dream world is like you're playing podcast at home, and someone gets to be the host and someone will be the guest or the co-host. And we never got as far as to come up with the actual rules. But the way it works is I have a bit card, which are some of our signature bits. We've added some bits recently. So if a bit comes up that we've sort of retired or that I'm not like into anymore, I'll use one of our new bits because we do have some new bits. And then you have a topic card on your right, and that can be, there's a lot of different options here. And I'm going to, I'm shuffling. I don't know if you can hear it. Oh, my audio.
Yeah, I can hear it. Yeah. No, your audio is perfect.
I wish you were pulling yourself, but I'm going to pull it. Your first bit is Buy Rent Meh. Buy Rent Meh is the signature game of the Friday Night Movie Podcast.
Yeah, that was actually my second card last time.
This is the official rating system of Friday Night Movie.
Yeah.
A movie is either a buy, a rent, or a meh, or, as was added later, a bleh. But that's only for something you really hate.
Right.
Okay. Then your topic is going to be sports. And so now my job as the host, right? This is the part where we're not writing the questions for you, right? My job as the host is to come up with your buy, rent, meh. And I've come up with it right here. And you're going to buy, rent, meh 3 fictitious sports teams.
Okay.
Right. So you're going to buy, rent, meh. And your first one is,
yikes, sports team.
the Cleveland Indians in Major League.
Okay.
You seen that movie?
I have.
The Mighty Ducks. I believe we talked about the Mighty Ducks together when you were on my show. So
yeah,
the original Mighty Ducks, pre-Knuckle Puck Mighty Ducks.
Yeah.
All right. pre Keenan Thompson.
Yeah.
Although I do love the Knuckle Puck team. That's probably my favorite Mighty Ducks team, but I do not like the second movie. So
I also like the Knuckle Puck band. I don't know if you've heard them, but they're very good.
What a great name for a band. So you've got them. And our last one will be, let's see, I'm trying to think, do you have a favorite sports movie or a general genre of sports movie you like? Because there's so many different ways I could take this now.
I would say my favorite sports movies tend to run under comedies. However, I mean, who doesn't love Remember the Titans?
Well, those are real people. So I'm not going to
Yeah, that's true.
It's like you can't not pick the Titan. Like you're going to pick Wild Thing Vaughn over the actual.
I'm going to say Matt on a movie about racism.
Exactly. This legendary. I live right near. I live right near that school.
That movie's so beautiful.
All right. So then I'll go old school. I'll go old school with this. I'm going to go with the Bad News Bears, the 70s Bad News Bears.
Yeah,
like the ones where they made a movie where little kids are drinking alcohol in the dugout. And the coach is like punching kids in the face, right?
Yes.
Like that's like the kid who wouldn't cheat gets punched in the face at the end of the movie.
Man, I mean, let's be real here. I have to buy the Mighty Ducks. I have to. Like the real question is the other ones. Because I've been flying V my whole life, man. I'm into the Mighty Ducks. I,
by the way, will be as bold as to say Mighty Ducks 3 better than Mighty Ducks 2.
Really?
Yeah. Even though it does not have Gordon Bombay in a core role and they have that like weird like Swiss teacher.
Yeah, they do.
I think the heart of Mighty Ducks 3 and the empathy that has to be built between the kids and the teacher is a really powerful element. And I like the setting of them. It kind of went back to the first one of like the kids from the wrong side of the tracks against the preppy kids. And so I love D3. D2,
That's a fair assessment.
D2 I always felt was a bloated sequel with great characters and gimmicks, but not a particularly good story.
Right. I actually am agreeing with you as you're saying this because I'm starting to realize the reason why I like D2 a lot is because of the bits.
Yeah, Knuckle Puck, Bash Brothers, like those things are great.
It's just funny. It's a funnier movie, but you're absolutely correct that D3 is the better movie.
Like, what are the stakes? They're fighting. They're playing against the Icelandic team. Like, if you're not going to go against the Russians or maybe the Germans, and if you're not going to play out some sort of World War II or Cold War thing, don't have a European team. Like, don't go all the way to Europe. Icelandic.
Yeah. Team Iceland is a pretty scary villain though. The scariest villain since Scar from The Lion King, I would say. But you know what? I would say I would rent the Cleveland Indians from Major League and I would meh the Bad News Bears because that coach would get canceled today.
Yeah, I mean, I love Walter Matthau, but that coach would not exist.
Yeah, that coach would not exist.
I'm gonna go with you there, because I think as much as I love Major League, that movie, it's dated now in certain ways. That movie wouldn't work the same way. Like even Mighty Ducks pushes it a bit, but Mighty Ducks is kind of, I mean, it's kind of timeless. Plus there's that like dog poop in the purse thing at the beginning, which is just like amazing kid prankery that has nothing to do with the rest of the movie that I just love. Like kids making pranks. I love it. So I'm with you there. Would you like to play another round? Because I
would love to. Okay. Man, I could do this all day.
All right. So our next game, this is one of our later created games. I love this game. We just played this on our upcoming episode, the one that we recorded last weekend, where we had two amazing guests, by the way. Have you seen any of Deani and Divine's movies? Have you seen The Selling or Deani and Divine Meet the Apocalypse?
No.
So I know about these movies only because Janet tweeted. She's like, oh, I was in these delightful movies. And I said, okay, got to watch them. Wonderful, wonderful horror comedy with heart. I would say like it's like the spirit of a Parks and Recs, but in like these horror apocalyptic movies. And these are brilliant. Anyways, we played Rex RX with them this week. And Rex RX goes like this. You are going to have an illness. It could be emotional. It could be physical. I'm going to give it to you. And then in your category is you're going to need to remedy it. Your prescription is going to have to be with a certain character actor's movie or part. Okay. That's how we're going to mix this together. But let's say you've gone to a con, you've worked really, really hard all weekend, partied a little bit, hustled to get your panels together. You're exhausted. Home, you're getting that bowl of cereal out to relax, right? Just enjoy and get those endorphins going. Yeah. What is your prescription for that person? Which character actor's movie or character actor do they need to see in that moment? Like, for example, for me, coming off of like that kind of a high of a weekend with like that much, like I would need to maybe see something with, let's see, who's a good example of somebody like I might want to see some vintage 90s Joe Pesci or something like that. Right? Does he count as a character actor? Maybe. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's a character actor, right? Absolutely. So just think of, we did a whole episode once with my dad on character actors, and it is to this day, I would say like one of our classics because my dad did research like I've never seen. Phil Hartman would be another one for me, right? I mean, Phil Hartman is is he even he's the character actor. Or maybe Stephen Root, right? Like I'd come home and I just like I need to do some dodgeball, maybe a little Office Space, and then if I wanted something more intellectual, throw in Get Out where he's a villain, right? So is there for sitting down with that bowl of cereal after an exhausting weekend, which character actor would you want to watch?
Yikes, man. This is a hard question. You always find ways to rack my brain, man. Like the last time I was on, you made me recast Back to the Future. Like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, but these are see, you're and I said this last time too. You would be able to do this anyway, right? Like just like whose movie could you go for right now,
so
right?
Hard.
You want a little Stanley Tucci?
As far as the way that I'm feeling, are we talking like had a really good con and coming down from that high,
sure,
or
however you want to describe it,
weekend and now I need something to pick me up?
However you want to describe it.
Well, because those are two different choices for me usually.
Oh yeah.
Whenever I'm in a high, I need something that is very familiar to me. I need something nostalgic. So something I remember from being a kid. Like a perfect movie for this would be Pee-wee's Big Adventure, where it's like I remember it from my childhood. I wouldn't necessarily say Paul Rubens is like my character actor guy, but I would say that movie specifically.
But that's like a movie that's like all character actors when you think about it, right?
It's all character actors.
That's a great example.
Yeah, it's like every single person is a character in that movie, and it's just bit after bit.
I showed my kids Pee-wee's Playhouse recently, and it just scared them. Like the show, because the show is on Netflix, and I was like, "Guys, this is going to be amazing!" And they were like, "Nope, this is creepy."
Why
and then I showed them the Weird Al show, and they dug that. They dug the Weird Al show.
Oh, really? Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I like the Weird Al show. It was fun. Oh, that's another one. UHF.
Oh, yeah.
UHF is another one for me, where it's like it brings back that nostalgia. It puts me in this place of like everything's fine. You could just, and you've seen it enough.
Fran Drescher, Billy Barty, right? These are
Victoria Jackson,
iconic character actors.
Yeah.
Michael Richards before everyone knew he was a jerk.
Yes. Yeah, so many great people.
And the dude who plays the villain, who is like perfectly cast.
Yes.
The guy who plays the head of the, like, that is exactly like your character actor villain classic guy.
Yeah. So, man, it's hard for me to just pick one actor.
I think you've done a great job, though, because what you've given is you've actually prescribed a cocktail of character actor experiences.
Yeah.
So for this particular situation, you're saying you're not going to go and take one medicine. You're going to need, you're so overwhelmed by this con experience. You're going to need something that pops all the different sparks in your brain. One good character actor performance is not enough, you know?
Yeah. And I got to be honest, Shai, if I were sick, I would take more than one medicine at a time.
Exactly. Right. You're basically taking the multi-symptom severe Dayquil of character actor movies here.
Exactly.
I mean, this was not an easy one too. So.
Another one, just naming another one, or naming a few here, which, are also character actor movies. Wayne's World is a big one for me. Which is kind of what made me think maybe my character actor would be Mike Myers, because you can throw in Austin Powers, you can throw in Wayne's World, you could throw in So I Married an Axe Murderer, stuff like that. And if you want to get like artsy, you can put Bohemian Rhapsody on.
Oh yeah, and let's not forget Steve Rubell in 54. I don't know if you've seen 54, but
no, I haven't.
Like masterful performance on his part.
I'd love to see that. Yeah,
that's a really underrated movie. I don't know why it's underrated. I think it's an awesome movie, but he is abhorrently creepy in that as the antagonist. I guess is the best way to describe it. He's the owner of Studio 54, who is an awful person, but the dreamer who came up with it too. And he's amazing in the movie, but he's like vile and creepy.
I'm into that. I like when funny people can be dramatic, and we can finally see other sides of them.
I think it's harder to be funny than dramatic.
100%.
Harder to land comedy than, and then I'll take it further. People can do comedy with heart. Your Amy Poehler's,
Williams.
Adam Scott. Would you say Robin Williams?
Yes.
Yeah. Those folks who can give you satire, but also unironic love.
Yeah.
And I'll say this about, and I'm not just saying this because we just interviewed them. I think Gabe Diani and Etta Devine are exactly in that zone for people who love that. But people who can make things really funny and not also make fun of having genuine fun. I know it's like a strange thing to say, but like they just don't have to be too cool to open up their emotions at any given time. I love all types of humor, but I really, really love when people can open up that way.
Yeah, me too, man.
To me, that's why Parks and Rec is one of the greatest TV shows of all time. Maybe
absolutely.
Could be the best of all time. I don't know.
I mean, there's a lot of amazingly great characters and character actors on that show, man. Like Amy Poehler and Chris Pratt, Adam Scott, Aziz Ansari, so many people. Yeah, Aubrey Plaza.
Retta is the perfect example. One of the funniest human beings I've ever heard of in my life. Yeah. And if you watch that show, The Good Girls. On NBC,
Good Girls, the drama.
Yeah, which is not like my favorite show ever, but I watched that show to see Retta just crush it as a dramatic.
Yeah, it's a complete left turn from Parks and Rec, and she's amazing. So let me ask you these last two questions before I let you go here. And thank you so much for giving me your time and for being on and everything. This has been such a blast.
This is so much fun. I love this show. This is a joy to be on this.
Oh man,
awesome.
That's so sweet. Yeah, I'm so happy to have you. The final question that I want to ask you is, what advice would you give to the childhood version of yourself?
Oh. Well, I mean, I guess in some ways this is advice that I have taken and it has paid off. So this isn't like thing I wish I would know. Mm-hmm. I know, but this is, do not lose your sense of childlike wonder. All right. Maintain your sense of childlike wonder. I feel like that's perfect for this podcast. And the other one is,
that's our phrase.
Listen to mom when she said you should learn a martial art when your body was still physically like able and strong, because trying to learn Taekwondo in my late 30s was like super fun, but ended up with concussions and me having to stop. And if I had just started it when I was like 12 or 13, I'd probably be in amazing shape right now.
And finally, what do you think that the child version of yourself would think of who you are now? Would they be proud of you? Would they think that you're cool? What would they think? At this
moment in my life right now, if I were to key into the extremely anxious and unsure of what hat I was going to wear in life, 16, 15-year-old version of me, which is probably, that was my peak tough childhood. I didn't have a hard childhood, but like, I would say like my toughest years as a teenager were 15, 16. I would pinch myself in pinch myself with the luck and the, not just luck, frankly, the privilege and the gratitude with which I should be living my life, which I try to, because I am married to the most amazing woman with 2 incredible kids and a dog and a day job career that when I was in college, like I lived the dream. Like I lived the dream of what I was studying in college. And then now with my creative, I wouldn't say my creative career because it's not something that makes money, but I would say with my side projects, I feel like I'm now in a place where my side projects are now in a virtuous cycle with all of the other aspects of my life. And that's something I heard people talk about that I was just like, what kind of nonsense is that? That's never going to happen. And I'm in a period right now where it's like that. So if I was 15 and I saw myself knowing that this was what 41 would be like, I would be very pleased and I'd probably sleep a little easier than I did back in those days.
Yeah, man. I love that. That's so beautiful. And that's a great way to end this podcast, man. Shai, thank you so much for being on Childlike at Best. Where can people find you online? You can follow me at Pancake and the number 4 table. That's Pancake 4 table on Twitter and Instagram. You can catch me every week on the Friday Night Movie podcast at Friday Night Movie on Twitter and Instagram. You can kind of like my whole side world is now consolidated under p4tmedia.com or pancake4table.com. If you go to that, I have a whole bunch of different domains that all lead to the same place. And that's where you can learn about my podcast, my music, events that I'm working on. Like it's kind of like everything that I'm doing is happening there in the creative space. And that's where. And man, this is so great. Thank you. I love this show. You do such a great job bringing people into that childlike space. Oh, thanks, man. That means and so you have great much taste. Oh, just to be able to talk Serial, Blink-182, and yeah, just run the gamut of just everything. Yeah, and it's funny, man. And I have you to thank for this, because I did something that I shouldn't have done, which was read the reviews of my podcast one time, and just to see if anyone was reviewing it. And I read one that was from you, and the title of it was Childlike Wonder, and it was the most beautiful thing that I had ever. Those 2 words together were just the most beautiful thing that I had ever read. And I was like, yes, dude, if that is something that encapsulates what I want to do and what I want people to remember from this podcast and from talking to me or whatever, is just to bring that sense of childlike wonder again, because when you're an adult, the magic fades sometimes, and you forget a lot of that stuff, and you forget that pretty much anything is possible. Pancake for the Table isn't just some funny name I came up with. The Pancake for the Table is a philosophy that is tied directly to that. It is that even when you're old and you can't eat a whole stack of pancakes anymore because life and metabolism have gotten in the way, you can still get a pancake for the table. You still connect to that. And in fact, what better way than to have it than to share it? Yes. And I feel like your show is a pancake in that sense, right? Yes, dude. Absolutely, man. I love that so much. And I I can't thank you enough for the kind words and for your support and for just being an amazing friend and also for being on the podcast. I've really enjoyed talking to you again, and hopefully this won't be the last time. We'll have many, many, many more conversations.
Absolutely.
And so for me, real quick, just for me, I am on Instagram at Mike Valdes. I'm on Twitter at I am Mike Valdes. You can go to whoismikevaldes.com to find out the answer to that question. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Subscribe, tell all your friends so we can grow this family, and don't lose your sense of childlike wonder. Bye, besties. That was a Geek Bro podcast. For more podcasts like this one, visit geekbro.net.